Long-haul truckers, what's the creepiest / most paranormal thing you've seen on the road at night? This is my father's story, and he wasn't a long-haul trucker but rather a 18-year-old gas station attendant in the late 70s, and without a certain long-haul trucker I probably wouldn't be here. The gas station was 24 hours and my dad was the only one working the night shift, 11 to 7 I think. A guy comes in and just gives him the creeps. Seems sketchy. He was wearing tight jacket / pants, and you could tell he had something in his pants under the jacket. It was during the summer and was warm, so why is he wearing a jacket to begin with? A lot of truck drivers used this station as it was the only one open 24 hours for a long stretch of the highway. They also had a big lot where they let truckers park and sleep or take a break. On this night at this time it was just my dad, sketchy dude, and one trucker in there he kinda knew, as in, came in frequent enough to be conversational, and asked if he'd stay in the station and hang out until sketchy dude left. Well, after looking at the stocked shelves for many minutes while sneaking peeks at my dad behind the counter, the sketchy guy eventually looked fed up and got into his blue car and sped off. Cool trucker guy hung out with my dad a little longer until another couple of guys came in to use the booths they had to eat a sandwich. I should also point out this was pretty middle of nowhere rural southeast United States and the 1970s. CB and landline was it. My dad only had a landline in the store. So the hours pass and my dad had shaken off the paranoia when all of a sudden this truck driver comes hauling into the lot, jumps out, and sprints into the store hollering he needs a phone. Calls 911 to report that he had walked in on a gas station 40 miles back, next closest station, to find the attendant shot and dead. No one else around. And the only other piece of information is that a blue car was speeding out of the lot when the trucker pulled in. Apparently they eventually apprehend the guy in the blue car. My dad confirms it was sketchy dude from earlier in the night, and they charge him with murder and armed robbery. To the long-haul trucker who waited around with my dad that night, thanks and hope you're keeping it real. Removed. I was coming back home from a trip from Michigan and I saw these people wearing cult-like robes. One in town, one on a highway, and one in a park, all staring at me. Smashed fireflies on your windshield will leave a glowing splatter if you hit them after they light up. Removed. Not sure if I've told this before on here or not. But this is my dad's story. Just to explain, he's ex-British Army, not scared of anything and super practical. He became a lorry driver about 1975. I think this was not long after he started. So this happened about 5 a.m. on a summer's day. It was a bit misty like you get some mornings early but bright, and he was heading out of London on the A3. He's driving his lorry, and up ahead was a young woman, early 20s, in a long blue dress standing by the side of the road. It must have been before the A3 was duelled, and all the barriers were put up. So Dad sees her, thinks she's waiting for a ride to work. Just as he's about to go past her, she jumps in front of his lorry. He immediately slams on the brakes, as he's sure he's hit her, but he didn't feel a bang. But where else could she be? Couple of cars stop to see what's going on, Dad shakily explains, and the drivers kindly offer to stay while he looks for her under the lorry. Dad looks, and she's not there. Other drivers look and there's nothing. No body, no blood, no sign of anyone. They all freak out a bit and then decide leaving ASAP is a great idea. He can't explain it, he knows she was there and he hit her. He spent the rest of his driving career avoiding that route. TLDR, my dad ran over a ghost. Myself and 2 friends had to drive from Reddeos, TX to Baton Rouge, LA one night in my Ford van. It was about 2 a.m. There is a particularly long and dark section of highway just outside buildings, towns or lights for about 50 miles. I was in the right lane coming up on a truck and pulled out into the left passing lane. As I was slowly overtaking this long truck, my peripheral vision caught a sudden movement of this big truck towards the right shoulder. I saw the truck was swerving to avoid hitting a person dressed in all white. White's arms were folded across the chest and eyes were closed as they walked across the highway. I swerved to the left and barely missed this ghostly-looking person with my passenger. Still remember seeing that the eyes were how close we came to hitting this person. I was listening to a radio station when this trucker called in. He said he saw a lot lizard get out of one truck, douche with a bottle of grape soda, and get into the next truck. Edit. Clarification, a lot lizard is a prostitute that works in a truck stop or rest stop. One time I saw a turn signal on a BMW. I'm a truck driver in the UK. Was driving through rural Scotland one night going down a country lane. All of a sudden I start to see flashing lights come through the trees. Lights of all colors flashing through the trees and causing some really freaky looking shadows on the road. I'm not a believer of aliens or anything, but my first thought was UFOs. Safe to say I put my foot down and got out of there. Found out the next day it was rave happening in a field. But at the time it didn't half scare me. I was driving in upstate New York in early spring during deer season, and not only were there deer everywhere you had to look out for, there was deer pieces strewn everywhere from cars hitting them, then more cars hitting the roadkill and so on. Literal deer chunks all over the roads. Gross. My stepdad is a truck driver and I asked him this question and he gave me 3 answers. In Winston-Salem, NC, a guy was masturbating while driving by his truck and my stepdad threw his water bottle at him. Another time he said he was up near Oregon and he was the only one on the freeway at the time since it was around 2 a.m. and something large and pale swooped down a few yards in front of his truck and swooped back up into the tree line. While driving at 70 miles per hour, a tire rolled ahead of him and went across the median, nearly hitting another car. Removed. Not a trucker, but I remember seeing a TV show or something where this trucker said in the 80s or 90s, I can't remember, he pulled off in a rest stop in a southern state at like 3 a.m. He said truckers stick together like a family, especially if one needs help with their gear forward/truck, they help each other out whenever they can. Anyways, he said he's getting ready to sleep and some guy starts knocking on his truck door, so he rolls the window down and this guy says he's a trucker that is having some engine problems and was able to park his truck way down at the other end of the lot. This guy at his door then asks if he can come help have a look at his truck. The trucker on the show said he thought it was odd because truckers usually just call their 24/7 roadside mechanic service that will try to fix your truck wherever you are, and if they can't, a new semi will pick up your load and your truck will be towed to the nearest diesel repair shop. He said that was the first red flag. He told the guy at his door, sure, I have to get some things and I'll meet you over there, so just start walking back, basically to get the guy to get lost. The guy at his door says okay thanks and disappears down the lot. The trucker on the show said he then realized he was the only truck in the entire lot and that this guy wasn't a trucker, so he turned on his rig and hauled out of there. He then notified other truckers in the area to avoid that stop and gave a description of the guy. I don't think the guy was ever caught. but his intentions were obviously bad, and apparently this was a common thing at the time, basically psychos making up at truck stops to take advantage of unknowing truckers just trying to have a rest. Outside of that, I think it's pretty basic knowledge that rest stops are shady as to begin with though lol. There are some pretty scary places in this country. Gary, Indiana. East St. Louis. Camden, New Jersey looks absolutely terrifying in the daytime. But driving in the Navajo Nation late at night always makes me a little uneasy. Wheeled into Shiprock, New Mexico late on a Saturday night / early Sunday morning. Stray dogs just prowling around the desolate city streets punctuated occasionally by cars blowing through red lights at top speed. Different night, late, on US 160 between Kayenta and Tuba City, Arizona. Very lonely, very dark road. Speed limit is 65, start slowly coming up on a car a few miles per hour below that. Once I get close, that car suddenly drops down to 35 and sits at that speed with the hazard lights on and me stuck behind it. I'm wondering what's going on, if another car is going to appear out of nowhere and try to run me off the road, rob me or worse. No cars coming the other direction, no cell service. Single lane, can't risk a pass because the road is so dark and windy. Finally found a straightaway, got around that car and got the out of there. Probably wouldn't have thought much of it on some country road in Ohio, but out in the desert your mind goes to strange places. The Navajo Nation can sometimes feel like a pretty lawless place. Oh, and the time around 11 p.m. when a person deliberately ran out in front of my truck at freeway speed on I-10 outside of Palm Springs. Barely made it around him. I've seen plenty of dangerous situations, but that's the only one that actually spurred me to call 911. Dispatcher says yes, pedestrian on the freeway, we already have officers en route. But that's just California for ya.